everybody. Welcome to the Backbone Podcast, where common sense still makes sense in a world that is sick and only getting sicker. And I wanted to make Fridays light. The last month has been absolutely just madness. I mean, it's hard to find the words to describe what's been going on lately. But Fridays, I want to keep it light because I do that for my profession with the kids. Monday to Thursday, I kind of give them their lessons, and then Friday we take it light. But today, I wanted to go back to 1986, much simpler times, much better times. I'll tell you something. I would not trade my childhood with today's kids for all the money in the world. All the money in the world. I mean, to think what these kids must live through, to think what they think is normal is just sad. It really is. And I bring up a lot of nostalgia with mine, and they call me a old man, and they have it better than me because they have social media. I think that they have it worse because of social media. But back in 1986, there was no such thing as social media. Thank Jesus. We only had friends, the park, bicycles, and we had music. We had great music. And in 1986, August 19th of 1986 to be precise, one of the greatest albums ever written, in my opinion, came out and exploded. And it exploded all around the world. And that album was called Slippery When Wet by the great New Jersey band Bon Jovi. I was hooked. I liked Bon Jovi when their first self-titled album came out in 1983. Didn't have a lot of success. But they had a song called Runaway, which was it was catchy and I liked it. And I was maybe 9. They then had another album called 70 Fahrenheit, which was But when they came out with Slippery When Wet, and they had hit song after hit song after hit song, and you probably know them all. You Give Love a Bad Name, of course, was the big one. Living on a Prayer is another big one. Wanted Dead or Alive, if you've ever been to a Bon Jovi concert, and I lost count after 50, is like their anthem. They usually close the show after that. They became a worldwide phenomenon by 1987. This was a record. The record label, of course, was Mercury Records. It was recorded in Vancouver in Little Mountain Sound Studios by a Canadian rock producer and legendary rock producer, Bruce Fairbairn, who died unexpectedly about 13 years later, died in 1999. They recorded the album between January and July of 1986, and they mixed it. And the guy who mixed, their sound engineer, this is incredible when you think about it. Bruce Fairbairn is top producer, right? I mean, you hit the jackpot getting him. But then your sound engineer and mixer is Bob Rock. And if you don't know who Bob Rock is one of the biggest rock producers of all time. I mean, he worked mainly with Metallica. Just imagine, he's second fiddle on this album. It's just astonishing how, these people, they grow so fast. The album it resulted in the first, what they call glam metal album, and it had 3 top 10 hits in the Billboard 100 charts. Slippery When Wet embarked on a tour that ran from July of 1986 to October of 1987. I did not see them on that tour. I saw them on the next tour, which was New Jersey, which was another huge album for them. Bruce Fairbairn produced that album as well. But I was completely hooked on Bon Jovi at that moment because every car that drove by in New York, and New York is not a rock town. It's not a rock city. It's mostly, in those days, it was a lot of hip hop wasn't around a lot, but it was a lot of freestyle. Hip hop was like rap was kind of, making its way into the mainstream. But it was a lot of almost like disco music, almost dance, a lot of dance music in the Bronx. Lots. But not here. Every time you were out in the street, out in the park, doing whatever, if you were cruising around, you heard You Give Love a Bad Name, or you heard Living on a Prayer, or you heard Wanted Dead or Alive somewhere. So it's coming out of some car. And it was an instant commercial success. 8 weeks as #1 on the US Billboard 200 charts. And it was named Billboard's top selling album of 1987. It's Bon Jovi's best selling album to date, over 28 million copies worldwide. And the album had a lot of success because of MTV. The tours, rock bands used to have this thing where, especially heavy metal bands, where they never smiled, they always looked pissed off, they were duck-faced, all that shit. But Bon Jovi changed that because they were smiling. They were these good-looking dudes who just smiled all the time, and the girls fucking ate it up. And John Bon Jovi with the hair and the looks and all that other stuff. I mean, he was the dude. He was the shit. Everybody wanted to be him. And the album has been called the turning point from heavy metal into rock-friendly pop format that has been commonly viewed as a breakthrough for hair metal. I see Bon Jovi more as a rock band, specifically a rock band, maybe a little bit of heavy rock, maybe. But heavy metal, I mean, heavy metal was always Metallica, Megadeth, Black Sabbath, of course, Iron Maiden. Well, they were kind of, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest were more like, they called them new metal. But Bon Jovi to me were always a rock band. And they had so many great singles that came out. It was that album was an unstoppable force. And most of the album was written by John Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora, the lead guitarist. But they also hired a legendary music writer named Desmond Child, and he helped write a few of those songs as well. It was the first time Childs and Sambora and Bon Jovi had worked together, and they actually wrote a lot of those songs in Sambora's mother's basement, which is wild to think. The title of the album was changed. The cover of the album was changed over and over and over again. The original cover of the album was supposed to be of this super hot chick, and let's see if I get in trouble for putting this up. There she is. It was supposed to be there. Now, of course, Mercury Records thought that the record stores, which were so popular, so powerful at the time, wouldn't allow this album cover. For those of you that don't know, there used to be these things called record stores, Virgin Records, Tower Records, all that. And they were very, very powerful in what they would sell. They could dictate a band's success or lack of. So if they saw an album cover like this, which today would seem, like nothing compared to what the garbage that we're exposed to now, they may have seen this as being indecent. So the album cover, of course, was changed to the popular one that you see here, which is, and it's really, damn it, it comes out really small, but it's the garbage bag cover. John Bon Jovi tells the story where the Mercury Records told him that they were not going to allow that album cover, so he took a garbage bag, sprayed it with water, and then wrote "Slippery When Wet" on it and said, "There's the album cover," and that's history. I knew that record top to bottom. I knew that record going away. It was something that you just couldn't escape of. My parents could not take me playing that record over and over and over again. And I didn't have a CD. Uh, I didn't have a tape of it. I had the vinyl. So I had to go back and forth, back and forth. And let me tell you something, records were a pain in the ass. I don't know how my parents or the people those days did it. Record, because they scratch and they this and they that. But they were such great days. Such great days. And so I wanted to take today to remember Slippery When Wet. One of my favorite records. There are so many of them. I can't really do like you see some of these reaction videos and you see some of these people that they get millions of views. And listen, good for them. For me I can't do a reaction because I live this stuff. How am I going to do a reaction to Paranoid? Black Sabbath's first record. I've heard it a million times. I could do something where I can do a remembrance of something, and I know remembering sounds like the album died or somebody died. It's just me going back in nostalgia because I'm trying to clear my head of all this stuff that's going on, and even yours, of all the garbage that's happening. I mean, shit was real back then too. Trust me. I was growing up during the Cold War, where we would have nuclear strike drills in school, where we would have to hide under a desk. Can you imagine, like, a nuclear bomb hits the Bronx, like as if the Bronx needs to be hit with any bombs, and the teacher saying, "Oh, just hide under the desk. You'll be protected." It's just. Music was a great escape. Television was a great escape. Movies in the 80s were kind of we had crappy those summer blockbusters that were so like lame. But music was great. Music was great back then. And I remember it fondly. I remember the concerts fondly. I remember the people at the concerts fondly. And I remember when it kind of started to change when grunge came along. I saw at one of the first Lollapaloozas, I saw Nirvana before they were famous. And me and my buddy Dale, who used to go to concerts with me all the time, used to say, "Oh God, I hope this shit doesn't last too long." And it's like, it probably is not going to last very long. But I mean, why are you shitting on it? And he goes, because the record companies are all the same. They'll hear this crap, and then there'll be 15 other bands that are going to follow, and then it might kill what we like the Bon Jovis and the Rats and the Poisons and the Cinderellas and all that. And in a way, it did. You had you had Nirvana and Pearl Jam that led the way, and a little bit with 9 Inch Nails, and then you got all these copycat grunge bands, and grunge only lasted a couple of years, but things did change a little bit. But it did correct itself. There were some great records that came out in the 1990s, but it was not the same after the hair bands kind of went astray. And you see today, a lot of those bands still tour. A lot of people still want to see them. A lot of young folks want to hear them. A lot of these guys, because they lived really hard, they died very young. But a lot of people love to hear the old stuff, the good stuff, the great stuff. I mean, this Miley Cyrus came out with a song called Secrets. And the only reason why I know about it, and I think the only reason why it's been advertised, was because the production, the musicians behind it were Lindsey Buckingham and Mick Fleetwood from Fleetwood Mac. And that's the only reason why I knew about it, because every time on my social media or my feeds, I would see Miley Cyrus teams up with Fleetwood Mac, and Fleetwood Mac fans are very loyal, like I am, and they're going to listen to this song. Anytime I hear, listen, I don't turn the channel off in the radio, in the car, when anything from Slippery When Wet comes on. Never. I can't. It brings me back to 1986, 1987. And the music is just too good. I mean, next year, think about this. That record will be 40 years old next year. That's incredible to me. That's just incredible. And it just, where's the day? Where do the days go? Where did the days go? You know, when you get older, everything happens faster. The days, the weeks, the months, they just go fast. You know, September's already over. It felt like 4th of July was yesterday. And to think I was in 1986, you know, as a 12-year-old, you really don't think like that. But we thought those days would never end. We thought, you know, rock bands would be growing out of the concrete streets like they always did. You know, in the 70s, you had the Eagles and Fleetwood Mac and Aerosmith and all these great bands. And then in the 80s, you had Bon Jovi and, well, Van Halen was mostly in the 70s, came out in the 70s too. But, you know, you had Skid Row and Metallica and all the, you know, and you were thinking in the 1990s, you're going to have great rock bands there too. And then in the 2000s, it's just going to continue. It'll never stop. And unfortunately, it has. I mean, what are my kids going to be listening to in 40 years? I mean, are they going to have a record that they can remember exactly where they were every time they heard it? Are they going to be able to say, yep, I have that record. I remember where I was when I bought that. I remember the exact store. I remember how much it was. It was $3.85, by the way. No, those days are over. And it's a shame. But that's why on Fridays, I'm going to dedicate it, no matter what happens, unless something horrific happens. I'm going to pick a movie, a record, maybe a book, maybe even a comic book or a television show that I'm going to bring back a little remembering to, and off the cuff try to tell you my feelings about how I felt and where I was at the time of this album here. You know, when you're 12 years old, you know, you're in a very awkward point in your life, especially as a boy, because things are happening, things are growing. You know, your kids don't have pimples today. I just I was thinking about that today. I don't think any one of my kids ever had a damn pimple. You know, what the fuck? It must be the steroids, or just my kids were genetically gifted. I don't know. But this record here, if you haven't heard it, go on Spotify and look it up. I think if you're into rock music, if you like ballads, the power ballad, which MTV craved for and became a huge hit in the 1980s, every rock band had a power ballad. This album is for you. This is the album that changed rock and heavy metal for the good, I would say. MTV exposed it for the bad, but that's how it always goes when a corporation gets involved in anything. Just like they destroyed music and movies and television and books and comics and everything that was good and pure and great back in the day. All right, there's my 2 cents. Thank you again for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Be careful out there, my friends. Satan is always busy. Be a man and have a backbone, because masculinity and common sense are worth standing up for. And remember, if it ends in an ism, it's a mental disorder. Have a good weekend.